So She-Hulk episode 5. Oh man, what can I say? I've been watching this show for 5 episodes, as episode 5 would imply. Um,
As they do, you know.
yeah. Uh, the question on the screen is it getting better or worse? And honestly, I don't know what to say to that because I feel like it hit rock bottom a couple of episodes ago. So I suppose you could say it's going up, but even then I wouldn't be inclined so much to say that it's getting better. So maybe it's just sort of hit like the level that it's supposed to be at and it's just sort of coasting there. Which is I think for me like what's the worst part about all of this is that's a level that is a lot lower than what I expect of the MCU. Like I think the quality that you expect from Marvel show or movie is and should be a lot higher than what this show has ultimately landed upon and it's sitting at. And it's unfortunate. It is like for example in this episode, so the whole episode is focused on the case with where it's Jennifer Walters v Titania LLC. So Titania,
Yeah.
played by Jamila Jamil, and what you get throughout the episode is like the main story is the court case. Then the side plot where um like the other people on her team on Jen Walters' team are going around looking for like superhero artifacts and then we get a version of Edna Mode in the MCU like the Incredibles, like it's a dude, not a girl, but um that's the B story, and he refers to the Avengers as the Avengers, and I'm like, you get a couple of laughs out of it. There's some cringe humor. I'm not saying this is like all bad. Like this show has its moments, it does, but it's just overall, I'm struggling to find like really what the point of the show is to exist, because the story isn't going anywhere. They set up a bunch of stuff, like a couple episodes. There's a Daredevil helmet. That's one of the spoiler alert. That's one of the things that happens in this. We get a tease that Daredevil is finally going to show up. Um, I should actually probably put up the. It's too late now. It's too late now, but I'll put it up
Too
anyway.
late. I've been
So
spoiled.
you've been spoiled. Well, you were spoiled before. Okay, never mind. I'm not gonna. I'm not. We talk about this stuff before we go on the air. So what concerns me the most about the show, as I mentioned, is there's like this is the Edna Mode character, by the way. That's the side thing,
Okay.
the house thing we go on. Um, the main character, Jen Walters, played by, a great actress. She's doing as I think as well as she can under the circumstances. Tatiana Maslany is doing a fantastic job from what she's given. The problem is this show has terrible writing, like in a lot of places. Like I said, it has its moments, but by and large, like it misses way more than it hits. Like the fourth wall breaks don't land. I'm struggling to understand what the main character's motivation is. Like, you know, if I think the show, the writers sort of assumed, or maybe did not assume, but they intended She-Hulk becoming like, a Jen Walters becoming She-Hulk as being the inciting incident of the show, and that kind of being the main. But if you count for that as being the inciting incident, that's not really a conflict. I mean, unless you have a totally internalized conflict of does she want to be a superhero or not. And if that is the case, then they're not addressing that in any level of detail that's reasonable either. But if that's not the main conflict, then where is the main conflict? Because we had that gang of guys, I don't know, they're comic book based, show a couple episodes ago, attack her in the street, try to apparently get her blood, and she realized, oh, I'm a Hulk. And then, she tossed them around like rag dolls and should have killed a couple of guys because like she tossed him into the air. The guy lands on the back of his neck, somehow still walks away from it. But point being, that was the only hint of conflict that we have gone up until this point. Like in the last episode, we had like Wong come in and we had a bunch of demons and Wong doing Wong stuff. Getting rid of them. But again, there's been a lot of action in this show, which by the way, there hasn't been a lot of action. But whenever we have gone like an action sequence, they try to get you one an episode at least. It's almost like inconsequential to the character. It feels like they feel compelled to give her an action sequence simply so that she has some punching and kicking and some superhero like action to do without it really tying into, again, whatever her main character motivation is, whatever her active goal in the show is. And again, these are terms that writers would use when you're like when you're analyzing a script, when you're reviewing a movie. This is Robert McKee stuff. This isn't, I'm looking at it as a fan and obviously saying it's not leaving an impression on me, not a good one at least. But even from when you start breaking it down as a screenwriter, as a director, as a filmmaker, there's a lot of shortcomings here. So that's what's concerning to me is that 5 episodes in, there's 9 episodes, we're more than halfway through the show. If the saving grace is going to be Daredevil, then I don't know what the reason for the show to exist is, because the saving grace should be like what the main character is doing. Like, Roland, what do you think about that?
It's just kind of yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. And honestly, I've been hearing a lot of these complaints, and it just wasn't connecting until you just said that, because now I'm realizing you're absolutely right. This inciting incident was very passive. This conflict that she's dealing with, like, oh, I don't really want to be a superhero, I want to be a lawyer. She just keeps playing it off, just like it's just like a little comment, and it's kind of their excuse of like, oh, see, this is a major plot line, and it's not. And it's sad to like see all these jokes of like, oh, this isn't just a cameo show, and then that's literally all it is. We don't seem to be getting a lot of too much of a really engaged lawyer story that we were promised.
Yeah.
I mean, I do kind of like the LLC thing, just because, I mean, if you're gonna make it more lawyer, that's the way to go, because that is kind of an interesting premise, that she
Right.
takes the She-Hulk name.
It is. I mean, and to be honest, like some of like the courtroom drama stuff in this, it's not even like it's not good courtroom drama, because the writers have, the main lead writers on the show said at one point when they were trying to promote the show, I don't know if they're being facetious or not, but it certainly seemed like they were saying like, hey man, we're not particularly good at writing legal stuff, but so we will try to like do our best here. And then a lot of the show has not really focused on getting like in the thick of, like, it's not Boston legal. You're not going to get like heavy courtroom drama out of the show. But whenever
Yeah.
they do get into like the courtroom, they don't go very deep in some of the arguments, like, of how this copyright law case is working. They don't even really hold up. Like, I went and did some research. I'm like, Titania is suing Jen Walters for what reason exactly? Other people called her She-Hulk. She's not using that as a trademark to make money off of it. So on what basis is Titania saying you are doing like copyright infringing, like infringing on her copyright? Like it's not a trade. She's not using it as a trademark. So if Titania has a trademark, she can merchandise. Like, for example, in real life, if She-Hulk was a character, and like I was a journalist reporter, and I got pictures of She-Hulk like being a Hulk and doing whatever she's doing out there in the world, and I want to just like go into Photoshop and crop her out and put her on a T-shirt and start selling it, and then I was the first one to go trademark the name She-Hulk, then I would have the ability to do all that stuff. Like, she can't come after me for that unless, she's like, oh, the stuff that's in the public domain, you just like snap like, unless it's libel, so it wouldn't be a copyright
Yeah.
issue, right? It would be a different kind of a thing. So some of like the legal drama stuff is not working for me either. And then like I said, I mean, if the saving grace ultimately is all these cameos, then I don't think that's a strong enough reason for a show any show to exist. Like, a show shouldn't be based around like cameos, like as being its main, like, attraction. It should
Yeah.
be a good character story. And I, as I mentioned this, I think I hinted at it. Jen Walters feels like a character in the show who is very passive. And the best comparison I can make is if you watch one of the Lord of the Rings movies, if you watch one of the Hobbit movies, the main characters in those shows, they're generally, or in those movies, they're generally passive. Like, they go on this journey and everything around them, like a lot of the other characters like Gandalf and Aragorn, like all of those people are doing a lot of like the heavy lifting. And these guys, like, they're doing something. It's almost like, or if you watch a Transformers movie and like Sam Witwicky, it's sort of just like going through, like, and all the stuff that the Transformers are doing, and he's just sort of getting flung around and screaming and getting picked up by these guys in their hands and like getting shoved into cars and out of off getting thrown off buildings. But even then, in some of those movies, they have like some kind of active goal, like something that that character is pursuing. In this show, she feels passive, and when I say she, I mean Jen Walters feels like she doesn't have an active goal to pursue other than she just wants to be a good lawyer and doesn't want to be a superhero, but she's stuck with, being a Hulk. Um, and that's an internal conflict which I think works well if you're doing a character study, but this show is like very plot based, not very character based, while the main character has a very character study-esque internal conflict without a really good external conflict. So it just feels like the show is meandering and going nowhere. And to me, like, ultimately, forget everything else, forget all the other criticisms, forget the CGI, which still, like, it feels lacking, like, in so many ways. Like, the animation looks like it's it's not motion capture. It's like, manual animation, and they're not doing a very good job of. You can see a lot of easy eases happening, easing in, easing out, and Bezier curves, and like, I can almost imagine how some of those animations are being done in whatever program they're using to do it. The texturing isn't great, and then sometimes the lighting, like the specular highlights when you're in the courtroom scene, and like the way the sun bounces off one side of her face and how dark the other side of the face is, and the contrast, and just how sharp the specular highlights are versus like a real person standing next to her, and how the light's interacting with her. Like, either that's a compositing issue or either it's a rendering issue. The lighting is not good. These CGI artists are not getting enough time. But like I said, put all of those mistakes aside, put all of those shortcomings aside. It's bad CGI, too many cameos, the comedy not working, the humor, the jokes not landing, the fourth wall breaks lacking. The biggest issue for me is the main character, as hard as Tatiana Maslany is trying, it's just Jen Walters doesn't have a lot to do in the show. She really doesn't. And that to me is the worst thing you can do to a show, is have a main character that the show is focused around, but the main character doesn't have much of anything consequential to do. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah. I don't know what else to say to that. I mean, I think that's about all I can add to the conversation for this, up to this episode at least. Here's to hoping the last four episodes pick up, and maybe when Daredevil shows up, the show will take a turn for the better. But so far, I don't know if it's getting better. I don't know if it's getting worse, but it hit rock bottom for me a long time ago, and it's certainly not, picked up from there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we got
Anything to
a
add
new
there?
franchise. Oh, never mind.
No.
86.
Anything to add to that? I suppose. No. Yes.
Uh, no, not
No.
really.
All right. Well, if you guys are watching the show and you feel the same way that I do, or maybe you love the show, let us know. Follow us on social. You can comment on the video on YouTube. Leave a comment below. Hit the like button, of course. Subscribe if you like our content. We talk about She-Hulk every week, so we look forward to, of course, you know, having you tell us what you were thinking about the show. There's 4 more episodes left to go here, so we're hoping, fingers crossed, that things are going to get better. But let us know what you think.